Since premiering in 2013, Rick and Morty has been a fixture in pop culture and a favorite of both fans and critics alike as it follows the insane adventures of a mad scientist and his idiot grandson. The show managed to claim the Emmy for Best Animated Program 2 years ago, and we are joined by one of the show's creators, Dan Harmon. I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and the first question I want to ask is about your Emmy submission this year. The ballots were just released today, and you are submitting the episode, the Vat of Acid episode. And I'm curious as to what led you and Justin to decide on submitting that one for Emmy consideration.
It's always a vibe thing. I mean, I think maybe on another show there might be more science to it. Like, oh, this episode feels more important than this one, or who knows what your Emmy science would be. But Rick and Morty is a very decidedly unimportant show. It makes a point to hold nothing sacred, and so what do you want Emmy voters to be considering? I just kind of think to myself about myself as an Emmy voter looking at something, and so I'm just going with kind of a gut about, does this feel like a worthwhile use of the money and time that goes into making 200 people do something and making 1 million people watch it? There's a lot of great collaboration happening for the Vat of Acid episode. Not only were the writers sort of under the gun and following a strange combination of bliss and anxiety for that episode, and also writing what they know and deliberately subverting structural norms. But in the end, one of the things I'm most proud of is that the episode was kind of short in runtime, and the director created the entire sequence where the dialogue kind of goes away and it becomes MOS, so to speak, and you're just watching Morty go through an entire relationship that you're always waiting for the punchline, and it just keeps going and going, and walking you through this entire story. And the director really kind of made that out of whole cloth to fill some time. And we barely changed a frame of it when we saw the first sketches of it. And I think to me, and probably to Justin, that was just created this whole picture where it's like, you know, if we're considered for an Emmy, it should be because of the best that the show represents creatively. And so even though the viewer might not know the story behind the episode's process, it feels like the magical episode of the season.
I'm sorry, I accidentally wasn't able to mute my microphone there. So one of the more interesting character arcs that we've seen over the show's run has been with Morty's Summer sister. Morty's sister, Summer. I'm sorry. Could you talk to us about the process that has brought Summer to her current state of darkness?
Very organic. It's interesting in TV, and even more so with animation, because I can only compare it to, for instance, Alison Brie on Community, kind of stepping into the role of Annie and taking it from a very Tracy Flick from Election derivative in my pilot to a fusion of Alison's real personality and writers observing the character on screen in the finished episodes. With animation, because the actor is merely a voice in a booth, you're even more so forming a relationship with the character as if they're a living person. And so just a canonical, cumulative incubation of a living thing that at some point has its own rules, and you just sort of start to feel like, for instance, Summer. I know that for that reason, having experienced that with Allison as an example on Community, when we were coming up with the cast of characters for Rick and Morty, I remember making the case that we should, if Morty's going to have a sister, since we're both guys and we don't have a writing staff yet, let's just make her a prototypical adolescent girl and give her, not make her two-dimensional, but just make her a blank canvas. So all we know about her in the first season is that she's the sister, giving us maximum potential to slowly realize what that means. And it's not as simple as, oh, she's a neat freak, or she's a Capricorn, or she's sexy or ugly or anything, like a real human being. Summer was given a unique opportunity to, episode by episode, on the fringe of the spotlight, flourish. And I think one of the first things that became the most valuable about her as a character to me was that she provided an entirely different dynamic between her and Rick. She's just a couple years older than Morty, but it immediately somehow felt less perverse, less maybe inappropriate for her to have more of a competitive sibling type relationship with her grandfather. And I think specifically about the episode at the end of season 1 where the parents are going out of town, and the first thing that happens is Summer says, "I'm going to have a party." And Rick says, "No, you're not, bitch. I'm having a party." And he literally is referring to her as bitch. And it just feels so not only innocent, but actually like kind of intimate and refreshing. You're like, oh, this is a completely different relationship. And I've always seen it like, Summer has this ability to get under Rick's skin. And she's, whereas Morty's relationship with Rick, when he's questioning Rick, he's questioning whether idealism should exist. Geez, Rick, isn't there a right and a wrong? To which Rick can easily just say, no, you're an idiot. You're wrong about everything. But Summer's argument isn't about idealism. Summer's argument is that Rick is a dick, and which is a very big sister thing. And Rick really gets shaken by it on an emotional level. He's less able and more compelled to swing back at Summer when she takes that swing. And so that gives you a whole different view of both characters.
So I'm curious, which character do you find it hardest to write storylines for?
I have classically found it the most difficult and the most compelling to think about Beth. Jerry can sometimes have the same challenges as maybe coming up with storylines for Shirley, Yvette Nicole Brown's character on Community, and that there was an almost oppressive risk of what the TV trope people call Flanderization, where it's actually so easy you're at risk with Jerry of falling into snowballing catchphrases and algorithmic personality traits. With Beth, there's almost an opposite problem, which is that she's a little too nuanced out of the starting gate, and there's therefore there's more fear of screwing something up. I know that at the beginning, it was a simple enough thing for me to say, well, Beth was abandoned as a daughter by the parent that she uncontrollably, therefore, deifies. She blames the mother for the father's abandonment without acknowledging that. She fetishizes exceptionality. She blames her husband, who is unexceptional, for her missed opportunities. Beth was defined in season 1 by all these things. You notice they're kind of reactions to other people. And that itself then became a thought of like, okay, how do we dimensionalize that character? Let's have them grow beyond those reactions. Those reactions don't have to change. We don't have to retcon her. But we do have to get her to a point where she no longer has some of these excuses. Otherwise, she's going to continue to be defined by them, and she'll become actually unrelatable. And so we would systematically push on those edges by saying, well, let's see what happens when she stops giving Rick a free pass. Let's see what happens if she gets to experience what if she didn't have to marry Jerry, as we did with the first interdimensional cable episode, which I thought was one of the most kind of sweet, without being saccharine, kind of developments about their relationship, which was to reveal that there is a universe where Beth didn't get pregnant in high school, and it's a world in which not necessarily, but it can be a world in which Jerry becomes Tom Hanks. And in that world, not only is there something missing for Beth, but there's even something missing for Jerry. So a more cynical version of that story would have had that Jerry was just, well, he's a famous actor, so he never thinks about that girl from high school. But he is thinking about her, and his life is kind of a wreck too. And our Jerry and Beth are witnessing, by virtue of those goggles there, that there must be something in spite of the fact that the reason I'm with you is because I got pregnant at 17, that doesn't mean that there's also not something else underneath there. And then we'd explored the codependent aspect of that relationship, but then also we ask ourselves constantly, like, yeah, but if Jerry didn't simply match in this codependent way, flaw for flaw with her, is there also, independent of that, some kind of chemistry between them? Is it sexual, or is it emotional, or things like that? So and those are questions that we're still asking as we write season 6 right now, and are editing season 5. And so that Beth is a challenge for that reason, because it almost feels like every decision you make with Beth is canonical on a level that it isn't with other characters.
2 years ago, the show got renewed in a bit of a strange way. It got renewed for 70 episodes over an unspecified number of seasons. And how has this type of renewal affected how you and Justin approach the future of the show?
I think, it was simultaneously the thing we had always dreamed would happen. And then, on any project that I've ever worked on in success and tenure, you manage to have this strange panic about the potential of panicking that sets in, this idea of like, okay, well, now we can't screw up. So is that why we're going to screw up? Why are we doing this? What are we going to do wrong? It's just thinking about not thinking about thinking about not thinking. In an industrial career sense, I looked at it as permission to focus on the show as a full-time job. And Justin and I had paid a lot of lip service to that idea as a partnership. Behaviorally, it would seem to have marked the difference more gradual between like Justin and I feeling this immense pressure to force ourselves to carve a retirement plan out of this show by making it perfect, to Justin and I gaining permission to ask ourselves what we enjoy doing on the show. Justin, pound for pound, is not a guy that loves every minute of being in the writer's room as much as I do. I say that with a lot of air quotes around a lot of the words, because I don't think anybody enjoys being in the writer's room. It's banging your head against a wall for a living. But I'm better able to see the dire consequences of not doing that headbanging, to the point where I want to be in the writer's room more than Justin. And Justin is a very lateral thinking genius who I imagine is really sometimes vexed by how much overthought has to go into doing something fun. And so, the partnership is allowed to continue to evolve around, exploring the lines between what it is we do to contribute to the show being the best version of itself. And now the pandemic just makes it like, who's gonna make Justin sit on a laptop for 2 hours at a time staring at a screen? Like, even when the writer's room was next to a Toys R Us in Burbank, it was still a challenge to get Justin to just accept that part of the job is being said no to over and over and over again by people that are supposedly your friends. And that only a fraction of the job can be everyone saying yes to each other and drawing pictures on the board that everyone laughs at, and then taking that and putting that on television. Like, that is the joy that Justin provides, that without which the show would be, it wouldn't have got its Emmy that we were honored to get. I mean, the show has this distinct flavor that a solid half of which is Justin not wanting to be there, which is like a very identifiable part of Rick.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best this Emmy season. And to our viewers, please like this video, subscribe to our channel to get all our latest content, and don't forget to go to goldderby.com and use the Gold Derby app to make your predictions and see if you can outsmart the top prognosticators in Hollywood. Thanks so much again, Dan.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.